Thank you, sir, for those words of enlightenment. Thank you for sharing with us about the different global sustainable development strategies adopted towards connected cities around UK and the possible ways of urban planning around our city. Now it's time to invite Ms. Prachi Rampuria, Eco-Responsive Environment, onto the dais to inspire us all with her insights on EcoTopia. You are gladly invited, ma'am.
Great, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Prachi, and I'll dive right into the presentation. So, I am here to talk about Ecotopia. So, I guess the first question is, what is Ecotopia? Ecotopia is an imagined world where it is ideal for both people and nature to thrive. It is based on the principles to minimize society's impact on the environment in ways we conduct our lives. And in doing so, that we foster equitable, inclusive, and sustainable urban growth. So we have founded this collaboration between the Urbit Trust, Connected Cities, Eco-Responsive Environment, SCAD, and inviting other partners and organizations to work together in trying to push this agenda forward in the context of India. But this does come with its challenges. So, in the context of India, with a population of 1.4 billion people, only 35% of whom are currently living in urban locations, the challenges for Indians, the future of India's towns and cities are not only important for India itself, but also to the world. It was mentioned in the morning that one of the key crises that we are living through is climate change. So we do need to radically reimagine how we live, how we want to work, and organize our lives in cities and in settlements. So ecotopian thinking naturally suggests that because of rising populations, and it is predicted that the urban population of India will double in the next 25 years, and that's just some stats by the World Bank. So the challenge ahead is complex, and it is quite staggering. And therefore, ecotopian thinking directs us towards making it essential to grow medium, which is the second and third tier cities as we see in this diagram, in order to ensure that pressures on mega cities don't blow up, which are already crumbling under a range of infrastructure and resource pressures. So the purpose of this presentation really is to put forward a case of how medium-sized cities, second and third tier cities in India could grow. So those that have a population of around 500,000 can extend the pressures of future growth. So undoubtedly this calls for innovation, and this calls for integrated urban planning. We all would be aware that a collection of sustainable buildings do not make a sustainable place. So in order to undertake sustainability in urban development, we need to think through the different scales of development as we see in this diagram. So we have the regional scale, the neighborhood scale, and then of course the individual building scale. So we need to do that in order to foster an ecotopian design approach. And systems thinking is very much central to this. What we mean by systems thinking is we need to work in holistic ways to develop and devise strategies rather than piecemeal thinking around housing, transport, energy, water, food, etc. So we need to come together as organizations, individuals, and partnerships in order to break new ground and innovate new development. So how do we do that? So in order to do so, we understand built environments as complex systems, which means that any settlement, any city, any town of any scale that we live in is made up of layers. We have the landform, the water and the green infrastructure, the streets, the plots and buildings. We don't necessarily see them separately all the time in an isolated manner. We experience them as habitats in which we all live. It is also important to understand that of these different layers, there are some which are deeper layers, such as the landform and the natural infrastructure, which if messed up with, take a long time to re-establish. And some layers which constitute the surface order, which change faster, such as buildings. They have a shorter lifespan than for example, the river. So we need to make sure that as we are designing and thinking about urban development, we think about the relationship between these layers in a way that the surface order or the design of buildings works with the deeper layer, and we don't work against it. So it works with nature. So the next following slides will use this layered approach to go layer by layer into some of the principles that we believe can help achieve EcoTopia in practice. So the first principle is connectivity. We feel that development must be concentrated, as Brian also was mentioning in the previous presentation as Nick, that development should be concentrated around transport nodes. That is to foster sustainable urban growth. And this is so that new housing, new and existing housing, and the people who live in them, they can get the best of both, the best of the city buzz and facilities, amenities, and also access to nature, which is the best of rural countryside. So it very much aligns with what Brian was explaining in his earlier presentation about the garden city model, whereby how you get the best of both city and village in the same place. This requires a range of transport modes, including strategic transport, which could be through railways, it could be through high-speed metro, but also at a more finer grain, it requires use of e-bikes, so defining catchments that include e-bikes, include cycling infrastructure, and more importantly, walking infrastructure. So the catchment area of settlements can be defined based on sustainable modes of transport, and another critical component of that would be the bus networks. So it's a whole hierarchy of transport nodes that need to work together, hinged on public transport. The second principle, so connectivity has to go hand in hand with ecological sustainability. And so we come to the water system. Currently, India is facing multifaceted issues around water. Water stress. It might be in the form of droughts, groundwater depletion, rivers decreasing the levels of water, and also a range of drinking water supply, for example, and we have seen recent examples where there have been particular cities who have really struggled with these issues. So from an ecotopian perspective, we need to think about water and the water cycle on a holistic level at the city scale. So we propose a regenerative approach to water management at all scales, in the building, within the plot, through streets as networks, and then at a wider kind of a region watershed scale as well. So this does mean that a variety of disciplines need to be working together in order to address this at multiple scales. Principle 3 is around the green layer. So in terms of green productivity and green infrastructure, both population growth and ever-expanding housing, what happens, it often results in urban areas eating into existing countryside. So it does it in a manner of sprawl, by which the access to nature and green spaces gets further outward. To address this issue, we reimagine the countryside interface as sets of strategically located, ecologically sensitive growth corridors, with green wedges between them to allow development so that everyone has equitable access to green space. This is more difficult to achieve in existing urban area, but certainly in towns which are expanding and have potential to expand, it can have a more strategic planned approach. At a more zoomed in scale, in order to maximize biodiversity, we all love living, walking along green streets. We need to have green spaces which are integrated right into our neighborhoods, into our streets, and into our plots and buildings as well. The next principle, principle 4, is about creating walkable neighborhoods. So from the early 20th century, all over the globe, including India, developments have evolved to favor car-centric lifestyles. And this, in turn, generates a range of health issues. And that further strains the ecological balance, also affecting the use, the ability for us to walk locally, and also our experience of cycling, using public transport, and so on. So to turn tables around, we imagine ecotopian settlements as a cluster of walkable, healthy neighborhoods supported by highly connected, landscape-integrated network of safe, attractive, healthful streets that encourage walking and cycling. We do learn, and from, for example, the super blocks of Barcelona, where the diagram is inspired by, where these healthful neighborhoods have everyday facilities within a 5-minute walking radius with appropriate densities, and the public transport networks run at the seams or the boundaries of these neighborhoods, connecting multiple neighborhoods together. Principle 5, we also look back at more traditional planning of Indian towns and cities, in particular related to how cultural spaces and open spaces were organized. This has been undertaken in a very rich and a culturally diverse way in India, and something to go back and learn from in terms of how we can have open spaces of different scale in front of our homes, but also more neighborhood and city level spaces to ensure every child has an access to park for its growth and development, and also to foster intergenerational interaction. Still in India, there is a lot of culture around intergenerational families and different generations living together, and open spaces can play a key role in social cohesion. So how can we foster multi-scale open spaces? And last but not the least, the 6th principle is around infrastructure and utilities. So with changing energy trends, multi-scale regenerative infrastructure strategies must maximize the possibility of resource sharing. With renewables now in the picture, as was referenced in the earlier presentations, we need to create neighborhood-scale networks of energy, water, waste, and data, so we can organize our resources smartly in the event of climate change and to foster climate resilience. We must look at infrastructure and utilities to ensure self-sufficiency in the future, so it can adapt to changing needs. And so in conclusion, this image reflects the ecotopian vision, which embodies all the 6 principles that I briefly outlined. But good design is not enough. Having studied architecture, urban design, having knowledge of what is good only goes so far. We do need to really focus and work hard on how do we transform the governance structures, political structures, win political support in order to align these principles with the priorities, both the local and national priorities of government stakeholders and politicians. That is really the main hurdle. I think there's a lot of guidance around what is good design, but how do we go from design to delivery and to implementation? I think that is something we need a lot of discussion and debate on. So for that, one of the ways is we can look out to places which have achieved this and see what lessons we can learn. So there are 2 examples here which I've referenced. There are more, but the images are from Amersfoort in Holland and Vauban in Freiburg, that's in Germany, where a range of ecotopian principles have been achieved in practice. So as much as these are design principles, there are places that can offer lessons, and we can look to how that can be adapted in the context of India at the scale and densities required by the cities and towns of India. And this inevitably requires discussion, debate on a range of topic areas, and I'm just summarizing 5 of them as my last slide. So first is around how do we foster integrated spatial planning, working across disciplines, cross-boundary working. How can we think about transport-oriented development and integrate the local state scale and the national scale so that railways, bus networks, as well as other form of more last-mile connectivity, sustainable modes of travel can work together. I think that is a big challenge. How do we organize our governance structures in a way to that everyone kind of is working towards in the same direction of using public transport as hubs for development? That might require creating special purpose vehicles, land pooling as well, land assembly in order to expand existing and new cities and towns. So that is the next step for delivery, which in turn will require innovation in finance and tenure. So these are all kind of connected strands which are deeply embedded in the way the political cycles and governance structures operate in India. So I guess what we are asking very simply, probably to some degree, is radically reimagining how these structures work without us working collectively to make that transformation. Seeing change on the ground in terms of ecotopia will be very challenging. It's not something we achieve in a day, but certainly if we work together over the years, I'm sure change will be possible. So on this note, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammad Firoz from NIT Calicut. Sir would be discussing